We are holding on 103b2, Kuf Gimel Amid Beis. We're continuing the story. Again, 103b2. We are continuing the story where Rav Yaakov bar Abba went to visit Rava on Shabbos. So we discussed yesterday what happened with Kiddush and how we saw everything. Today we get into Havdalah. What happened at the end of the Shabbos? Ki matala Abdullah, and it starts when Shabbos finished and they came to Havdalah. Rava went to say Havdalah, Kam Shemoi va'adlik avuka mishraga, and he went and his shamus came and lit a torch to do Bar Mi'aresh. What is a torch? Is what we use. In other words, a many-wicked candle. And as the Gemara is going to explain why we need this. So Amalei, Rav Yaakov bar Abda said to Rava, Lama lach kulahai. Why are you going through so much trouble? We already have a lamp here. You have your electricity going, right? You have a lamp burning over here. Why did you have to go take a special Havdalah candle? So Amalei, Rava first says to him, Shema midata denavshikavet. My shamus did it on his own. You're right, really, we could have used just the lamp that we have burning regular, but he did it on his own. So Rav Yaakov Abba didn't really like this answer. Amalei, Milo Shemile Mine Demar Loihavi of it, but did not the shamus ever hear from you that such a candle is needed, a torch, a multi-wick candle? So Amalei, so Rabbi now gave him the right answer. Does the master, you, Rabbi Yaakov Abba, not hold that the Havdalah candle that should be used for Havdalah should be the way that it should be a hidur mitzvah, so that the candle, what do you call it, should be the choicest way of doing the mitzvah, i.e., when you light with a candle that has many wicks, the flame is a much more robust flame, so that you're able to see boirei mi oirei ha'esh, the many different types of fire, i.e., the white, red, and yellow of the fire. And that's what we want to see. We want to see the nature of fire. We want to see the actual kind of fires that we have. So then Rava began saying Havdalah. And he said, and we're going to recognize a lot of these words. Hamavdul ben kodesh l'chol, benchta you Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam, besta you Hashem, our God, King of the universe. Hamavdul ben kodesh l'chol, who separates between the holy and the chol and the mundane. Ben or l'choshech, between light and darkness. Ben Yisrael la'amim, between Yisrael and the nations. Ben Yomi Ashri l'sheishes yemei amasa, between the seventh day and the 6 days of labor. So I'm already going to let you know this, that last lashon, Ben Yomi Ashri l'sheishes yemei amasa, between the seventh day and the 6th day of labor, nowhere in the Torah do we ever see that the Torah uses that line for a Havdalah, for a separation. And the Gemara is going to bring it up in a roundabout way, that in fact, this last line, Ben Yomi Ashri l'sheishes yemei amasa, is not a saying of separation, a lashon of Havdalah. It is instead part of the Chasima Sabracha. It's part of the end clause of the bracha itself. Amalei, upon hearing Rava say such a long bracha, Hamavdul ben kodesh l'chol, ben or l'choshech, ben Yisrael la'amim, ben Yomi Ashri l'sheishes yemei amasa, he said to him, why are you saying such a long Havdalah? Lama li kulahai, says Rav Yaakov bar Abba to Rava. V'amar Rabbi Yehuda Marav says, Hamavdul ben kodesh l'chol, when somebody simply says, Hamavdul ben Kodesh l'chol, who separates between the holy and the mundane, Zu hi Havdalose Rabbi Yehuda Anosi. This is the Havdalah of Rebbe HaKadosh, Rebbe the Prince, Rabbi Yehuda Anosi. Now, in truth, this is Havdalah. So, for an example, if you come to BJC you come to Shayat Tefillah for Mincha Ma'ariv, and you brought your car Friday night, and so you left your car there over Shabbos, when can you take your keys? After Ma'ariv, when the Zman comes, you have to say the words, Hamavdul ben Kodesh l'chol. I am separating between the holy and the mundane, and then you can take your car keys and get into your car. You don't have to say anything else. So Amalei, Rabbi explained it to him, I hold according to the following tradition, according to the following minhag. The Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rabbi Ishia, because Rabbi Elazar said in the name of Rabbi Ishia, Hapoiseach lo yipsach misholosh. When saying Havdalah, one should do wishes no less than 3 lashonos of Havdalah, no less than 3 expressions of separation. V'hamoisif, if one who wants to add, lo moisif al sheva, should not do more than 7 expressions, no do more than 7 expressions of separation. What does this mean? The Gemara obviously is going to spend the next daf going through this. Amalei, so came Rabbi Yaakov and challenged Rabbi again. We're now on today's daf, Kuf Daled Amid Aleph, 104A1. 104A1 says, but the master Rabbi, you didn't say 3 Lashonos of Havdalah, 3 languages, 3 expressions of separation, nor did you do 7. You did 4. Hamavdul ben Kodesh l'chol, ben Or l'choshech, ben Yisrael l'amim, ben Yom ha'shvi l'sheish yemei maseh. That's 4 expressions of separation. It's not 3, and it's not 7. Says the Gemara, Malay, so Rav answered him, Ibra, remove ben Yom ha'shvi l'sheish yemei maseh, between the 7th day and the 6 days of work, me'ein chasimuhu, because really it's only a clause that's attaching itself to the ending clause of the bracha. What's going on over here? The words ben yom hashvi l'sheish b'yamasa, separating the 7th day from the 6 days of work, nowhere in the Torah do you actually find such a language of Havdalah, such a language of separation. Instead, as we're about to learn, when you have a bracha that is of some length, it's not a one-line bracha, it's a more lengthy bracha, we try to go ahead towards the end of the bracha and put an expression that either wraps up like a summary expression of what the whole bracha was right before we conclude it, or there's an argument to be made that you actually go ahead at the end of the bracha, include some language of the beginning of the bracha, so that you should know what this whole bracha was about from the beginning. And the Gemara is going to talk about this right now. V'amar Rabbi Yehuda Mashmuel, Hamavdil, somebody who's saying Havdalah, tzarich sheyoyma me'ein chasimo mitoich lechasimosai. In the body of the bracha, near its conclusion, one should put a clause in that's similar to the conclusion, i.e., summarize, put a summary expression of what the whole bracha was about. In other words, what's the summary expression? Ben Yom hashvi l'sheish yemei maseh, separating from the day of Shabbos to the 6 days of work. Ubepumbadisa amri, and in Pumbadisa they said, you should near the end put in an expression, a clause similar to the opening of the bracha. Because the bracha is so long, you should remember as you're getting to when you're concluding the bracha, what you were starting with in the first place. Freit the Gemara, my benayu. What is the practical difference? Like this year. Again, Erev Pesach is Shabbos. Pesach is already Motzei Shabbos. Shabbos. When you're making Havdalah, going from Shabbos into Yom Tov. In other words, man, the Yomi ain't the one who says the clause similar to the opening should be recited near the ending. Nothing more needs to be said. Lo boy l'meina ben kedushas Shabbos l'kedushas Yom Tov hibdalto. That's all you have to say. All you have to do is say, right? You already have the words at the end of the bracha on Motzei Shabbos going into Yom Tov. Ben kedushas Shabbos and kedushas Yom Tov hibdalto, to separate the kedusha of the Shabbos of the king leaving the kedushas Yom Tov to the kedusha, the holiness, the sanctification of the duke coming in of Yom Tov. But the one who says that you need to wrap it up, you need to put a clause that summarizes the whole bracha near the end. You do have to put this bracha in before concluding. Fine. And we, of course, do put this in right at towards the end of the bracha. When we're going from Shabbos into Yom Tov, part of the Havdalah is Ben Kedusha Shabbos and Kedusha Yom Tov Hidalta. Hidalta v'Hidalta l'Yom HaShvi l'Sheish Me'emasa Baruch Atah Hashem Hamavdu Ben Kodesh l'Kodesh. That's what we say. Now, Gufa, says the Gemara. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Elazar, and it said in the name of Rabbi Ishia, Hapeseach lo yipsach b'shalosh. When you're saying Havdalah and you're using languages, you're opening up the bracha with expressions of separation of Lashonos of Havdalah. Do not use less than 3 expressions of separation. And if you're going to add lo yosef al sheva, don't do more than 7 expressions of separation. Frank the Gemara, Meisvei. What are you talking about? I got a b'raisa. We're now on 104A2. 104A2. Ha'omer Havdalah is when one says the Havdalah b'motzei Shabbos on Motzei Shabbos u'b'motzei Yom Tovim, and at the conclusion of Yom Tovim u'motzei Yom Kippurim, and at the end of Yom Kippur u'b'motzei Shabbos l'Yom Tov, and at the conclusion of the Shabbos leading into Yom Tov u'b'motzei Yom Tov l'chol haShamoid. And when you conclude Yom Tov going into Chol HaMoed, you have to make a bracha of Havdalah, Amavdu ben Kodesh l'chol. But Avuloi b'motzei Yom Tov l'Shabbos. But we do not recite when we go from Yom Tov into Shabbos. If Yom Tov ends on Friday night and Shabbos is going to hit, it happens sometimes that Shabbos is the first day of Chol HaMoed, for an example. We do not make an Havdalah going out of Yom Tov into Shabbos. And as the Rashbam explains about 15 lines down, because the duke, the count, is leaving, the Hamelech Nichnas, and the king is entering. It is not the proper thing to escort, to lead out the duke, when everybody is really following after the king. Since the king is Shabbos, we're going up to a higher level. Malin v'kodesh v'ein meridin. We go up in holiness and we do not go down. Going from Shabbos, going from Yom Tov into Shabbos is going up in holiness, is going from greeting the duke to greeting the king. So therefore we do not make an Havdalah, because on the contrary, we're going up. We're not separating. In fact, we're moving forward towards the king. Going further, Harogil Omer Harbe, one who's well versed, who's very good, who knows the Lashonos, the expressions of separation min HaTorah, should say many different separative causes. She'einu rogel oima achas. And one who's not well versed should say one. Hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. You see that this Baraisa allows for one expression of separation. So how could Rabbi Oishia come and say that the minimum expressions of separation is 3, when we just say over here she'einu rogel oimar achas 1, and for the Gemara Tanoihi. In fact, it's a machlokes Tanoi. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan says Benon shel kedoshim oimar achas. The son of the holy ones, which we're going to discuss in a second, say only one expression of separation. But we, the regular people, are used to saying 3 languages of separation. Hamabdu ben kodesh l'chol, ben or l'choshech, ben Yisrael la'amim. The 3 expressions. Ma ninu benon shel kedoshim. Who's the son of the holy ones? Rabbi Menachem bar Simai. Rabbi Menachem ben Simai. Mai korale benon shel kedoshim. Why is it called the son of kedoshim? Because he would not even gaze on the graven image imprinted on a coin. So picture a quarter, right, that has an engraved image. He would not look at the image. The reason for that is twofold. Even though of course a quarter is not avodah zarah, but because we're so worried about graven images with regard to idolatry, he wouldn't even look at a quarter. He wouldn't look at an engravement on a coin. The second reason is because he didn't want to get a taiva, a desire to run after money. So he made it his business that when he dealt with money, he didn't even look at the money. Sholach le Rav Shmuel bar Aidi. Rav Shmuel bar Aidi sent to him, Chananya achi oma achas. Hananiah, my brother, only says one language, one expression of separate. The less halacha kavose, and the halacha is not like him. And as you know, the halacha k'lemaisa is we say hamabdu ben kodesh l'chol, ben or l'choshech, ben Yisrael la'amim. 3 expressions of separation. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Hamavdil, somebody who says Havdalah Tzarech Shiyama Me'ein Havdalah Sa'onu B'Torah, should say expressions of separation like are mentioned in the Torah itself. Says the Gemara, Meisvei, I got a problem here. Say the Havdalah's Heich. What is the order of separation in Havdalah? We go like this. Omer, we say Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. The way blends best, Baruch Ato Hashem, Ben Shtiu Hashem Elokeinu, our God, Melech Olam, the Master of the world. What Hamabdu ben Kodesh L'chol, who separates holy from the non-holy, from the mundane. Ben Or L'choshech, between light and darkness. Ben Yisrael Amin, between Klal Yisrael and the nations. Ben Yom Hashvi L'Sheish Shemei Amasa, between the 7th day and the 6th day. Now remember, that expression right there, as we already know, is really a causative. It's not actually a language, an expression of separation in Torah. Ben Tomei L'Tor, between impure and the pure. Ben Hayom L'Rechava, between the sea and the dry land. Ben Mayim Ha'elyonim L'Mayim Ataptoim, between the upper waters and the firmament and the lower waters. Ben Kahanim Leviyim Yisraelim, between Kahanim, Leviyim, and Yisraelim, v'choisen, and you finish off with Beseder Bereshis. And you finish off with Beseder Bereshis, 104.83. 104.83. And you finish off with the order of Bereshis, which if you think about it, would make a lot of sense. Because we just finished Ma'aser Bereshis. Shabbos, to rest, was the last action of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the Shisha Yemei Bereshis. So that's why this man Yomot says you finish off with the order of Bereshis, Ma'aser Bereshis. The Acherim Oimrim, but Acherim say B'yoytze Bereshis. You don't say the order of Bereshis, you say who forms creation. And by the way, you'll notice the language. Yoytze Bereshis, who forms Bereshis, in the positive, in the future tense. Another riot to the Torah, to the evolutionary reality of Ma'aseh Bereshis. HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into the system, right, that the system goes ahead and continues to form. And that's it, who forms B'yoytze Bereshis. Weiter, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Choysem Mekadesh Yisrael. You finish with who sanctifies Israel. And as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom of the Rashbam. 4 or 5 lines from the bottom of the Rashbam in the wide lines. Mekadesh Yisrael, Mikol Olamai Shiyotze, from all the world that he created, like Kiddush El Yisrael, he only sanctified Klal Yisrael. Ulefi Perusha Zeh Shayich Chasima, and that is why you have the Chasima. Now, so says the Gemara, back to the Gemara, the in Isa. Now, if you want to say that Abdullah, you only say those languages of expressions of separate Lashon Abdullah that are mentioned in the Torah. Ha bein hayom l'rechava l'kesiva bein Abdullah. But the separation between the sea and the dry land, the Torah never uses the word Havdalah, right? Sami mikan bein hayom l'rechava. Delete from here between the sea and the dry land. You're right, it doesn't belong. If that's so, then between the 7th day and the 6th day of labor, it's also, right, what it calls is also not a language of separation, like we said before. The Torah doesn't use the language of separation to separate Yom HaShvi, Shabbos, from the weekdays, which means it's only a clause. It's a wrap-up clause. It's a summary clause. So now you remove that also, and you end up with only 6. You only end up with 6 languages of separation in the Brisa. You only end up with 6 languages of separation. You said before, we don't have less than 3 and no more than 7, but there's no such thing as 4, 5, and 6. And for the Gemara, Amri, Kahanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, Trey, Milaninu. In fact, the separation between Kahanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim is in fact a combination of 2 things. Bein Leviim, Yisraelim, between the Shevet Levi and the other tribes of Israel and the other Shvatim of Klal Yisrael. Tiksei Be'esahi, and at that time, Hibdil Hashem, Hashem separated as Shevet HaLevi. He separated the Shevet HaLevi. So there you go. That's one lashon. And Ben Kahanim Leviim, and within the Shevet Levi, he separated the Kahanim from the Leviim. Diksiv, because it says, B'nei Amram, Aaron, and Moshe, the children of Amram, Aaron, and Moshe, Vayibodel Aaron La'adishay Kodesh Kedoshim. And Aaron was separated to sanctify him as a Kodesh Kedoshim, he and his children. Now, Michta Mai Chosim, at the conclusion of the Havdalah Bracha, how do you conclude? How do you finish the Havdalah Bracha? Rav Omar Mikadesh Yisrael. The Shmuel Omar Hamavdul ben Kodesh L'chol. Layet Allah Abaye became Rav Yosef Ahad the Rav. Abaye, and some say it was actually Rav Yosef, condemned the ruling of Rav. Tam Mishmei the Rabbi Shua ben Chananya. It was taught in the name of Yeshua ben Chananya. Kol ha'chosim mikadesh Yisrael, v'hamavdul ben kodesh l'chol. Anybody who concludes Abdullah with the blessing, a bench that you Hashem, who sanctifies Israel, mikadesh Yisrael, and whose mavdul ben kodesh l'chol, and who separates the holy and the mundane, ma'richen lo yomav u'shenoisav. In heaven, they lengthen his days and years. So let's just, I already said this once before, why do we give the bracha of Marichin Yomav U'Shenoisav, right? Days and years. Just say you shall lengthen his days, or you shall lengthen his years. So there's a famous story with the children of the Sfas Emes. The Sfas Emes, the Geri Rebbe, was nifter in his late 50s. At the Levaya, one son turned to the other son and said, our father was zoicha to arichas yomim. So the other son said, what are you talking about? He was nipped in his late 50s. He said, I didn't say arichas shonim. Shonim, the amount of years a person is given, that's up to Hashem. Yomim, the days, that's up to us. What we do with each day, that's us. And our father was certainly Zoicha to Arichas Yomim. So we bench people, they should be Zoicha to Arichas Yomim, to long days, because that's what's in our hands, to make our days as fulfilling as possible. So we say Arichas Yomim V'Shonim, full and complete days and full and complete years, the years from Hashem, the days from our own, from internally from ourselves. We're now on Amid Beis. Kuf Dalet Amid Beis, 104b1. The less halacha kivase, and the halacha is not like it. Says the Rashbam, the last thin line before it gets wide. Halacha kivase, again, 104b1 Amid Beis, Kuf Dalet Amid Beis. Halacha kivase, Kirav Yeshua ben Chananya, Lefi she'ein chaismin b'shtayim. Because in fact, we do not end a bracha with two expressions. Beperek shloisha sha'achu in Mesechtes Brachos, Elo kishmuel dehalayit aleh derabik. We only ended like we said Shmuel, who says Hamavdol ben kodesh l'chol. That's how we end the bracha, because Abaya and some say Rav Yosef was layit, disproved of Rab's cheshbon. Now we got a story. Ula ikli lePumpadisa. Ula came to Pumpadisa and stayed over Shabbos. Amalei Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yitzchak Berei. Rabbi Yehuda, who was the Rosh Yeshiva at the time of Pumpadisa, of the Greek Yeshiva in Pumpadisa. The Yeshiva of Pumpadisa lasted almost 1,000 years, the longest lasting yeshiva in the history of the world. It was around, Pumpadisa and Surah was around all the way to the time of Rav Hai. Rav Hai lived about 100 to 150 years before Rashi. Ula Ikla Pumpadisa, Amalei Rav Yehuda, the Rosh Yeshiva of Pumpadisa, Rav Yitzchak Berei, to Rav Yitzchak his son. Zil amtile kalkolo de pere. Go bring the chazi heicha abdul. And while you're there, see how Ula says Havdalah. Why the basket of fruit? Because the rule is once Shabbos finishes, you're not allowed to eat until you make Havdalah. So by bringing you a basket of fresh fruits, he'll want to make Havdalah. He'll make Havdalah and then eat the fruits that you're bringing them. Lamaisa, Rav Yitzchak his son, Loi also, Rav Yitzchak did not go himself. Shodilei Abaya. Instead, he sent Abaya. He went into the Besmedish, Rav Yitzchak, the son of the Rosh Yeshiva, and he said, Abaya, you go to Ula. So, Ki also Abaya, when Abaya came back, Amalei, Rav Yitzchak asked him, Heichi Oma, how did Ula say Abaya? Amalei, he said to him, Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu bench to you, God, bench to you, Hashem, Elokeinu, our God, Melech Ha'ilu, the Master of the universe. Hamavdul ben Kais, between the holy and the mundane, the Suloi, and he said no more than this.
Yitzchak.
Came to his father, Rabbi Yehuda, Rosh Yeshiva, and he said,
Yitzchak.
And told me, and I'm telling you, my father, and Ula only said, I'm out of the Kodesh L'chol. So Rabbi Yehuda, the Rosh Yeshiva, was very upset with his son, and he said, Rabbi Banuse Demar, the Saruse Demar. The master's gaiva, haughtiness, and the master's domination. You were haughty because you thought it was beneath your dignity to go and see what Ula was doing, and you dominated the other Talmidim by grabbing Abaya out of the yeshiva and going ahead and making him go to Ula. Yeah, Charlie?
Yeah.
I'm not hearing you. Say it again. Say
No,
repeat.
we were having trouble
Okay, let's say
hearing
one more
you.
thing. Garmalei Lamar, forever. This teaching that you can just get away with saying I'm Abdul ben Kodesh L'chol will never be said in your name, will only be said in the name of Abaya. And in fact, you know what happened? Abaya became the Rosh Yeshiva of Pumpadisa, not Rabbi Yitzchak. Abaya became the Rosh Yeshiva. After Rabbi Yehuda was nifter, Abaya rose to the position of Rosh Yeshiva. Very interesting. Meisvei, so they challenged Ula from the following the Brisa. Kol brachas kulon, all brachas, but all doesn't mean all. It just means these kind of brachas. Kulon peseach bebaruch v'chosim bebaruch, that start with Baruch Ato Hashem, also end with Baruch Ato Hashem. An example of this is the first bracha, Baruch and we end with and of course Kiddush begins that way. Right? And we go and make it, and we end with Baruch. Chutz bibirchas mitzvahs, like the bracha on the talis. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam liyisatev batzitzis, to wrap yourself in tzitzis in your hand. Ubirchas haperos, and the blessings buried priya eitz obviously does not have an ending clause Baruch atah Hashem, and the reason for that is the short brachas don't require it. The big brachas require a Baruch at the beginning and a Baruch atah at the end. And also bracha hatzmucha l'chaberto, blessing brachas that follow in a pattern. So in other words, the second and third brachas are benching. Noida lecha and rachem end with Baruch atah, but don't start with Baruch atah. Okay? Or all the other brachas in Shemona Esrei. The first bracha begins with Baruch atah. The second one doesn't. Ata gibar, Ata Kadosh, Ata Chaynein, Refe'enu, right? They don't do it because they're part of a cycle, a series. Ubracha Achrayna Shebekriya Shema, and the blessing that follows the recitation of Shema, Emes V'Yatzev, Emes V'Emuna, right? It only doesn't start with Baruch Atah. It's connected as one of the birchas Kriya Shema. It only ends with Gal Yisrael. Sheyeshem Peseach. Some of these begin with Baruch Atah. Again, fruits and mitzvahs. Yeshbem Shechaisim B'Bracha, and some of them end with Baruch Atah Hashem. Then Pesach B'Baruch. That's like, for example, the second and third bracha of benching. 104b is in the book, and I told you about it. But does not conclude with the blessing. The Yesh Shechais in the book, and some of them Karachin doesn't start with so. 104b2. Reason for this is quite simple, because I was sayach b'bar. That's the fourth bracha in Ben Kol nature. It was only established after the Churban Bayis Sheni, when Beitar, the city of Beitar, after the revolt broke out, as the Gemara says, 2 million people were killed. The blood ran out of Beitar for 2 years, and they didn't allow the people to go in there and bury the dead for 15 years. So Hatoiv Yametiv was Hatoiv, that after that Hatoiv, when we went in after 15 years, we got permission to bury them. And Hamativ, that when we went in, the bodies were in pristine condition, were not purchased. This actually happened with the Marami Rutenberg, the famous story of the great Marami Rutenberg, the Rebbe of the Rosh, possibly the Rosh's father-in-law, that's somewhat unknown, where the government at the time in Germany, I believe in Rottenheim, captured him and put him into prison, and they wanted a huge ransom in order to get him out of prison. And the Marami Rutenberg sent out a message: do not ransom me, because if you do this, they're going to start kidnapping rabbis throughout Europe, and they're going to keep on ransoming us, and they're going to take away all our money. So the Marami Rutenberg died in prison, and I believe they left the body in the prison for 15 years until a rich Jew came and redeemed the body. And when they took the body out of the Marami Rutenberg, he was completely and utterly pristine, as if he had passed away just that day. Okay, we are now on Kuf Hey Amid Aleph. We still have 10 minutes. Kuf Hey Amid Aleph. We are now on Shabbos' Daf. Kuf Hey Amid Aleph. So we start doing Shabbos' Daf. Kashala Ula. This is a problem to Ula, who began Havdalah with Baruch Atah Hashem, but did not conclude with Baruch Atah Hashem. If you remember, Ula just said Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol, who separates between the holy and the mundane, and that's where he stopped. Says the Gemara, Amalach Ula. Ula would tell you, Hanami kibirchas the mitzvahs damya. The truth is, Havdalah resembles the brachas like over the mitzvahs, like what we do liyisatef batzitzis, to wrap yourself in a talus. Birchas hamitzvahs, my tama. Why birchas hamitzvahs? Do you start with Baruch Atah Hashem and you don't end with Baruch Atah Hashem? Mishum dohaydahu, because it's a simple expression of thanks. Hanami haydahu. Here also, it's simply a simple expression of thanks. Let's see what we can do in the next 5 minutes. Rav Chananya ben Shleim and the Talmidim of Rav were sitting together at a meal Friday afternoon, Erev Shabbos, because Rabbi Yehuda Saba. Yehuda Saba was attending to them. Rabbi Yehuda Saba was their waiter. Amrulei, they told him, Zil Chazi Imikadosh Yoima. Go see if nighttime fell and the day has become holy. In other words, has Shabbos arrived? Naspit v'nifli Shabbato. If that's the case, we will interrupt this meal, we'll cover it over, or we'll remove the table, and establish the rest of the meal in honor of Shabbos, like the Shita Rab Yehuda, that you have to stop, you have to make Kiddush, you have to bench, make Kiddush, and bring back the table and start a new meal.
When are they talking about?
The word about Ma'ariv later, Daddy, after the meal.
Yeah.
We'll do Ma'ariv after the meal. A Ma'ariv is only a reshus. Eating on Shabbos is a delight. It's an oineg. So therefore, that, according to them, comes first. If I'm sitting and eating already, the Divrei Seifrim of Yeshaya Navi, that you should be a delight, that comes first. We'll catch up with Ma'ariv later. Remember the first Mishnah in Brachas, in Shas, right? You got all night. You got all night to say Kriya Shema. So remember the sons of Rabbi Gamliel. So, Amalahu, Ramahuna Saba said to them, Lo nitzuchu. You don't need all of this. Shabbos kibsa nafshe. Shabbos itself establishes the meal. By the coming in of Shabbos, Shabbos is an automatic. Or like we like to say, Shabbos doesn't wait for anyone. It happens by itself. Here's the weekdays, and now it's Shabbos. So the Shabbos is Kaveya itself. The Shabbos is Kaveya itself. In other words, and if you take a look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines into the wide lines of the Rashbam. Kaveyas lekiddush. she'asa litan achi kiddush alma michashechahu chashuva achilas Shabbos me'aleh. Since it's also to eat until you make kiddush, from the time it becomes twilight and Shabbos arrives, this meal has now become sanctified. The Amarav, because Rav says, Kishem Shabbos Kodeis L'Maiser, just like the advent of Shabbos establishes a meal with regard to tithing, which is as follows. You're not allowed to separate Maiser on Shabbos. Now, the rule is Maiser is only required for food that's been completely processed. But we said, Minatori, you're allowed to snack on unprocessed food. The Rabbanon come along and say, on Shabbos, you're not allowed to even snack on unprocessed food. You're not allowed to do that because we want to separate it out. Kach Shabbos kivui l'kiddush. So too, the advent of Shabbos established the meal in regard to the kiddush obligation, prohibiting the eating of the food prior to reciting of kiddush. In other words, don't have to remove everything. The day it came, now you're mechuyev to do kiddush, make kiddush, and keep on eating. No problem.
You have to cover the challah.
Just take a challah cover. That's it. Cover it up, a challah cover. Savar minei. So the Talmidim of Rav thought to learn from this. Ki hechi de cover the kiddush, when just like the advent of Shabbos establishes automatically the chiyuv of kiddush, kakavi alav. So too does the departure of Shabbos. So if I'm eating a long Shalosh Shudas and the end of Shabbos comes, so automatically it's now weekday. The logic should be the same. Amalahu Rav Amram, no. Achi Amarav, the Kiddush Kavuas. For Kiddush to make it, to sanctify, the Shabbos automatically is Kaveya establishes. The Loila Abdullah Kaveyas. But for Abdullah, it does not establish because Taisva Shabbos. Extend the Shabbos as long as you want, right? The longer you keep Shabbos, the better off you are. This only applies regarding interrupting a meal, that at the leaving of Shabbos, we don't interrupt the meal to recite Abdullah. On the contrary, like the Chassidim do, they'll go all the way to 72 minutes to 90 minutes and keep on eating Shalosh Shudas. Regarding a new meal after nightfall, that's if you're doing Shalosh Shudas. But if you weren't eating Shalosh Shudas and now you want to start a meal, no. To start a meal, of course, you have to make Abdullah before you can start another meal. This interrupting of the meal, we say it's unnecessary only regarding eating. In other words, if you're doing Shalosh Shudas, keep right on going. But with regard to drinking, absolutely not. We're on 105.82. If one has not been eating a meal, but merely been drinking on Shabbos afternoon, he has to stop in order to say Havdalah. But what kind of drinking? I'm talking about only wine and beer. But where water is concerned, we have no obligations to you drinking it. However, today, Coca-Cola or Pepsi is considered, or coffee is considered Chamar Medina, is called like the beer of the provinces. And in fact, if you don't have wine or beer, you're allowed to make Havdalah even on Coca-Cola. And this is against, and this ruling about drinking goes against what Rav Huna said. The Rav Huna, because Rav Huna saw a person drinking water on Motzei Shabbos before saying Havdalah. Are you not afraid of getting askara, which was a throat disease, which they were terribly afraid of? It constricted the throat and essentially strangled the person. The Tari Mishmei, the Rabbi Akiva, Kol Atoyim Kulum Klum Kaidem Havdalah. Anybody who tastes anything before Havdalah, Misasa Ba'askara, will die from askara. But Rabbanim, the Bei Rabbi Ashi, Lo Makbid Amei, but the Rabbanan who studied in the yeshiva of Rav Ashi We're not particular about drinking water prior to Havdalah. Water is not a problem. One who does not say, for some reason did not say Kiddush on Friday night, the big Friday night Kiddush, is he allowed to make up for this by day, the Shabbos day? Now, we know we make Kiddush by day, but the Kiddush by day is really Bayer Priya Gofen, and that's it. The main Kiddush sanctifying the day is obviously by Yechulu and the bracha that we make Friday night. So it says the Gemara, Amalei, 10582, the right-hand column, Amalei, said Rav Nachman Yitzchak to him, Midi Amri Debei Rav Chia, from what Rav Chia's son stated, Mi Shalom Hibdu B'Matzah Shabbos, one who did not recite Havdalah on the end of Shabbos, on Matzah Shabbos, Ma'avdu B'Halach Kol Shabbos Kulai, is allowed to say Havdalah throughout the entire coming week, which actually means only until Tuesday night. That's why in the Yoim of Wednesday, you'll notice at the end of it, we add 2 extra sentences. Because Wednesday already is the beginning, getting closer to the next Shabbos. So when he says over here, Kol Shabbos Kula, it means until Tuesday night, you're allowed to make Havdalah. That's the halacha, by the way. If you forget to make Havdalah of Matzah Shabbos, you have until Tuesday night to catch it up. So that logically, Adiba could say one who forgot for whatever reason to make Kiddush on Friday night, has the whole day of Shabbos to make it up and to say the full Kiddush. Esvei, Ravina asked from a brisa, Leile Shabbos v'leile Yom Tov, Friday night and the nights of Yom Tov, Yesh ben Kedusha alakos. They have the requirement that you have to say Kiddush over a cup of wine. The Yesh behem haskara b'birchas hamazon, and they have the requirement of being mentioned in birchas hamazon, Ritzei and Yala v'Yavai. Shabbos v'Yom Tov, but the Shabbos day and the Yom Tov day, the actual day, Ein Bahem Kedusha alakos. There's actually no chiyuv to make Kiddush over a cup of wine. But you do have to remember it say and Yala B'Yava. Now, the Isal Kedat Mishaloi Kiddush Be'erev Shabbos Mikadish V'Hoylech Kol Kula. But if you want to say like you, that if you didn't say Kiddush at night, you have the whole next day to say the Kiddush, the rest of Shabbos. Shabbos v'Yom Tov Nami Mishkagas Le'Di Yesh Ben Kedusha alakos. Therefore, it turns out that if you forgot to say it Friday night, you can't say it by day the Kiddush. So you see that even by day, you can find the case. You can find the case of where the full Kiddush, the sanctifying Kiddush, is said by day. The Eloi Kodesh Me'urta, because if you didn't say the Kiddush at night, in the evening, Mekadosh Lamacha. So how could you bring a brisa that says by day, Shabbos v'Yom Tov, Ein Behem Kedusha alakos? There is never a requirement of saying Kiddush over kos. Yes, there is. If I didn't say it by night, I can say it by day. Amalei, says Rav Nachman, the Eloi Ketani, but as for what the halacha is, if someone did not say Kiddush at night, 105A3, the Tana didn't teach this. That he didn't teach this. Esvei, so comes along Ravina again, and he asks, Kavoid Yoim u Kavoid Loila, if one only has enough wine, right, or let's call it desserts, for one Shabbos meal, and he has to choose between the honor of the Shabbos day or the Shabbos night, which one does he do? Where does he put his emphasis? Kavoid Yoim Kaidim. The daytime is more, what do you call it? He should save the wine and the delicacies for the daytime. And that is because the daytime is more sunny, the more, what do you call it, is more night for enjoyment. But if he only has one single cup of wine, that's it. He's got enough wine for one Kiddush. That means what should he do? Amar Alov, he says over it, we're now on Amid Beis, Kuf Hey Amid Beis, 105B1, and we're going to finish in the next 5 minutes. Kiddush Hayoim, he should absolutely say the Friday night Kiddush. He should sanctify the Shabbos. Kufay Amid Beis 105b1. Kiddush Hayoim, he should definitely sanctify the day of Shabbos, even though this will leave him with no wine for the Shabbos morning. Mipnei Shekiddush Hayoim Kaidem Lekvoid Hayoim. Because the sanctity of the day, to sanctify the day, comes before, on Friday night, takes precedence, and comes before the honor of the day on Shabbos day itself. Right. The Im Isa. And if it's true that one who did not say Kiddush Friday night is allowed to go ahead and say Kiddush, the full sanctification Kiddush, all Shabbos day, Lishvik Abramacha, then leave the cup until tomorrow, La'avid Beitrei, and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You'll cover the sanctification of the Shabbos by day because you're allowed to do it if you don't do it Friday night. And by that way, you'll also do Kvoid Hayoim. You'll also give honor to the day by having the wine by day. Amalei, no. Chaviva mitzvahs b'shata. Cherish the mitzvahs in its own time. Because the reason magdimin lemitzvahs, the zealous are quick to do mitzvahs. Or ein mavirin ala mitzvahs. Do not push off doing the mitzvahs. Mitzvahs abol yodei al tamtzelu. A mitzvah that comes to your hand, don't leave to the side. We have a million different types of expression. The idea being, if it comes to you, don't procrastinate. Grab it while it's in front of you. So says the Gemara, mitzvah b'shatoi. And do we indeed say that cherish the mitzvah in its own time? V'al we learned, one who enters his house at Matzah Shabbos. He makes a blessing on the wine, on the flame, and on the spices. And only after that, like we do, and afterwards he makes Abdullah ala kos, over a cup. Actually, it's the same cup, as we know. But if he only has 1 cup of wine, so now we've got a problem. He's eating the meal, right? The shalosh shudis, right? And he wants to bench ala kos. We said the Birchas Hamazon should be ala kos, and you also have Abdullah that needs to be done ala kos. He leaves the cup until after he finishes eating his nighttime meal, and he says Birchas Hamazon over it. And then he links everything after Birchas Hamazon. He does Bar Miyario Eish, over the same cup. And we don't say cherish the mitzvah in its own time. I have benching over here. Let me drink from the cup during benching like I should, and I'll worry about Abdullah later according to that cheshbon. We don't say that. Amalei says Rabbi Nachman bar Yitzchak to him, when do I say chaviva mitzvahs b'shatoi, cherish the mitzvahs in its proper time? I'm not doing it as a wise man who comes up with Aesop's proverbs, right? Aesop's fables. I'm not a visionary. And I'm not merely an individual authority. I am one who learned this in yeshiva, and I'm the one who continued to use chazers and reviews my studies of what I learned in front of the presence of my Rebbeim. So I am saying it with authority of my yeshiva and my Rebbeim. And so too 105b2, and this is where we're stopping, right? And so too the Talmidim, the Rabbeim in the yeshiva go the way I said it. There's a difference for us between bringing in the day and taking out the day. With regarding bringing in the Shabbos day through Kiddush, we advance. The more we advance it, the better. Tosfos Shabbos. The earlier you can make Shabbos, all the better. And in fact, we're saying we're cherishing. We have Chavivus, the day of Shabbos. We're showing pure love for the day of Shabbos. with regard to delaying taking out the Shabbos day, the more we delay it, the better. It shouldn't look like a burden to us. And now we're going to finish up. From this we learn out 8 different things. That one who recites Abdullah, Matzah Shabbos, and Shemayin Esrei, Charlie, this is the Atachan Antonu. Somebody who does the Atachan Antonu, Sarich Sheyabdul ala Kais, still needs to do Abdullah on a Kais afterwards. This is where we see it, because logically you should say, I don't need to. I already did it. I drove my car home. Doesn't matter. You want to make a separation over a kais. Umishnamino bracha to una kais. That birchas hamazon, whenever you can, should be done over a kais. And that means if you're doing a zimun, certainly a zimun with 10 people should be done al hakais on with a cup of wine. V'shmamino kais shel bracha tzarich shir. And learn from here that the cup of the kais shel bracha, a kais of making a bracha, needs the minimum amount of a revius, a fourth of a look. How do you know this? Because otherwise the question wouldn't have started. You would simply take whatever wine you have, split it into 2 little amounts in 2 different cups, and I would have had 2 different cups. The fact that the Gemara didn't say this is proof that you only had enough wine for a revius of 1 cup, and a cup is not anything less than a revius. And from here you learn the one who recites the bracha must taste the wine. You must go ahead and taste the wine, because you're making it's not enough to simply put it to the side. That one, he renders it blemished. In other words, once he drinks it from Birkas HaMazai, so let's say let him just take a drop and leave over wine that now can be used for Abdullah. Why didn't the Gemara bring that suggestion? Just drink a drop of wine and that's it. Because once you drink a drop of wine, it becomes disgusting. You drank from it, somebody else shouldn't drink from it. So therefore, you shouldn't make another mitzvah with it. You need a clean cup of wine. Ushma mino tam mabdul, that one who tastes food prior to saying Abdullah still has to say Abdullah that night. You're not supposed to taste food with thing. And now we're on Kuf Vav, we're on Sunday's daf. Ushma mino oimesh shtei kedushas akos echad, that you could recite 2 blessings of kedusha, of sanctification, over 1 cup. In other words, birchas hamazon, and then later Abdullah. This is obviously in a case where you only have 1 cup of wine. Not when you have when you have enough wine for 2, you're not allowed to. But b'shas adachak you could. Ushma mino Beis Shammai hiba liba de Rabbi Yehuda. This is Beis Shammai, and it's like Rabbi Yehuda. What do you call it? It's going according to Beis Shammai because he said birkas hamazon first, and then the flame before the fragrance. That was the sheet of Beis Shammai according to Rabbi Yehuda 2 dafim ago. And now to finish up, Ravashi Oma Tamai Pogoy v'Koishel Brachat Tzirich Shir. Do we see from here that the one who tastes the cup, rendering it blemished, and the cup that it requires a minimum amount, Chodar Milsu, is really one thing. The Hachi Kam, and this is the way you need to learn up the Braisa. My Tamai Pogoy. Why is it that the one who tastes the cup renders it blemished? To using as another to use it for another mitzvah, because a kaisa bracha requires a shir, requires a minimum amount, and once you taste it, it loses its minimum amount. Rav Yaakov bar Aidi kopir achatzva pegimo. Rav Yaakov bar Aidi was so particular about using wine even from a blemished pitcher, a pitcher that somebody had already drank some of the wine. He wouldn't use it for kiddush Abdullah or birchas hamazon. Rav Heidi bar Shisha Pocket Akasper Pegima, he was particular about a wine from a blemished cup. Even a barrel, if somebody took wine out of a barrel, even then he was already disgusted by it and wouldn't use it. Very good, everybody. You're now off the hook for Shabbos. Perfect. We are now going to start from Tanu Rabbanan on Sunday. Okay, we're going to stop at Zocher Hashem Shabbos L'Kadsha. That's where we're going to start on Sunday in Mitzvah Hashem.